Good morning, listeners, and welcome to our 20th episode of Dollars with Sense. I'm your host, Terrence Vanderwood.
And I'm Ella Lange. Good morning to you all. 20 episodes. Isn't that amazing? It seems like it was only 6 months ago when we started with our first episode. Remember way back then when we were talking about RRSPs?
Well, yes, that was 6 months ago. Since then, we've covered a big number of topics like RRSPs, RESPs, TFSAs, RIFs, life insurance, and much, much more. There's a ton of information that is available to you to listen to at any time on our Facebook page, Dollars with Sense. Our show is all about how to manage your money smartly and make the most of your wealth-generating ability. Today, we are going to tackle a topic that can be a real emotional juggernaut: divorce.
Yes, and here's the reason why we want to discuss this subject. Canada has one of the highest divorce rates when compared with other industrialized nations. In 2012, the national divorce rate was 41%. In comparison, that same year, the lowest rate of divorce was 12% in Italy. As you can see, that there is a lot of people going through this process, and this is why we felt it is a good idea to delve into the world of divorce.
Yes, and we are going to use another client scenario to help you through the ins and outs of the financial side of divorce. Our intent is for you to be able to recognize similarities in possibly your scenario. We, as your financial gurus, would like to shed some light and information on your situation and be able to answer your questions around this very sensitive subject. After 18 years of marriage, Glenn and Wendy Lacoste will be providing us with their story to provide the scenario you need to ask the right questions.
And when you have those questions, email us at twofinancialgurus@gmail.com. That's the number 2financialgurus@gmail.com, or call us on 778-879-0820. Or get a pen and paper and get ready to write down your questions and notes, because there's going to be a lot of gold nuggets for you with this scenario and your scenario. So you're listening to Tips on Until Debt Do Us Part on Dollars with Sense.
Welcome back. I'm Terrence Vanderwood. If you're just joining us, my fellow financial guru Ella and I are talking about being smart with your dollars in divorce here on Dollars with Sense. We will be using the help of a real-life scenario. Of course, the names have been changed to protect the identity of the client, but the information is very up-to-date.
So our unhappy couple is Glenn and Wendy, who have been together for 18 years. They have one son, Nathan, who is 22 years old and lives in the same house as his mom and dad. He is loving his new job as a border guard, but he's emotionally attached to the house he grew up in and wants to stay in it. He wants it to stay in the family. As the only heir to Glenn and Wendy, they both are sensitive to his wants, and ultimately both parents want to make sure their child will be okay after their divorce. Glenn and Wendy's desires are somewhat at odds. Wendy wants $400,000 in lieu of her value of the home and to be out of Glenn's life as quickly as possible. And Glenn, on the other hand, wants to protect as much of his assets as he can so he can build Nathan's inheritance as much as his modest lifestyle will allow.
Glenn is a really good saver and has about $415,000 in his RSP, TFSAs, and non-registered accounts. He also owns half of a duplex that is a rental unit. He has a pension and is just officially retired, as he is now 65 years young. Glenn and Wendy own the other half of the duplex together as their primary residence. Wendy, sadly, does not have any retirement savings in place or any other outside assets. She is a few years younger, so she is still working full-time, but as you can imagine, she needs some financial way of affording her retirement. As mentioned before, she has decided that $400,000 is the right number for her. She views the rental unit as something that is Glenn's asset to be passed on to Nathan, so she is willing to not have that as part of her departing package.
Now, you may be wondering how Glenn and Wendy came to this decision, and it seems pretty trustworthy of both of them to agree to this type of settlement. Well, first they decided they wanted to go their separate ways. Once that conversation was had, they came to an agreement that the relationship was over, but they both contracted their own lawyers and hired a mediator to help them strike and legalize the deal. By the way, in case you were not aware, a married couple have to be separated for 12 months before they can apply for a divorce. Those of you who are common law do not have quite the same restraints as the marriage contract, but from a tax perspective, the common law separation period is 90 days.
So you may have figured this out already, but if Glenn has $415,000 for his retirement and Wendy's needs are $400,000 for her retirement, where does that leave Glenn? Well, Glenn receives the equity in the residence, which is worth the amount of the settlement, but it is locked inside the house. So Glenn will have to get a mortgage on the residence at 65 years old. Not an easy thing to do, especially since he has to qualify in his retirement years. Luckily, he has a kick-ass financial planner and mortgage broker who will be able to make it happen for him. He will be utilizing some of his retirement assets to take advantage of the possible tax issues down the road and build in some forced savings for Wendy as well. Even though the marriage has ended, Glenn knows how poor of a saver Wendy is and wants to make sure that she has some retirement savings to fall back on.
So this is how the money shakes down. Glenn is going to give Wendy half of his registered retirement savings plan, RRSP. He's able to transfer either a specific amount or half of the value of the RRSP, whatever is agreed upon in the separation agreement. With this transfer, Glenn is able to solve a tax problem that he was going to face in a few years' time: mandatory RIF payments. You see, when Glenn turns 71, he'll be then mandated by the government from this year to the end of his life to withdraw a set percentage every year, no matter if you need the money or not. This was an unexpected bonus to Glenn and works in his favor for achieving his goal of reducing his tax bite in retirement. Because it's a marital breakdown, the RRSPs can be transferred from ex-spouse to ex-spouse without any tax implications, withholding tax fees, or contribution room adjustments. In other words, the money is transferred from RRSP to RRSP without costing either of them any fees or charges.
That is true, except that the RRSP money that was invested 4 years ago now has to leave the institution. The money at the time was invested into mutual funds with a deferred sales charge, so there will be some costs there. It is hard to predict all the changes that happen in life, and Glenn feels the advice and help he has received with his investments are worth those charges. Not only that, he has approached Wendy to split the bill for these charges, and she agreed. Glenn also gave Wendy $30,000 immediately after they agreed to separate, and before they signed the separation agreement.
At that time, Glenn didn't realize how detailed and particular the separation agreement would be. He was taking a bit of a risk paying Wendy like that, but happily, she has honored her agreement. The rest of the settlement to Wendy will come from the mortgage that Glenn will be responsible for on their residence. As part of the settlement agreement, when signed, Glenn will have 30 days to have the financing in place. At the end of that time, there is no financing in place. If there's no financing in place, the house must be put up for sale within 7 days. If these conditions are met, then Wendy will no longer be on title for the house.
Well, that certainly gives a hard and fast deadline, and that's exactly what Wendy is looking for. She wants to have her fair portion of the assets and leave Glenn and be on her own. When the process first started, Wendy thought it would be a simple writing of the check and then the divorce would be final. But the steps involved are much more complex than that. The separation agreement becomes a key document in this case because they both want this divided and settled as soon as possible. In essence, the separation agreement becomes how the assets will be divided, and without this document, Glenn cannot get a mortgage on his home.
Unless Wendy agrees to be the co-owner of the mortgage too. We have been spending a lot of time talking about the assets, but what about the debts? Well, the debts that the married couple have together are also part of the separation agreement. Fortunately for Glenn and Wendy, they do not have any. But I just want to remind all of you out there that debts are treated in the same way assets are. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, Terrence and I will talk about other details like Glenn's pension and touch a bit more on what assets fall outside of the separation agreement. Don't go away. We'll be right back for more Dollars and Divorce on Dollars with Sense. Welcome back. If you're only tuning in now, your two financial gurus are giving some insight on how the financial picture looks within a marital breakdown. We have Glenn, who is 65 and in his first year of retirement, and Wendy, who is 61 and works at a 9-to-5 job. They have one adult son together who is not a dependent but lives at home because he, Nathan, wants to keep the house in the family.
Yes, that is probably the greatest fear of all parents who think about or are going through divorce. How will my children handle it? At least that comes to top of mind for me. Nathan, fortunately, is a bright, smart, and well-balanced young man. He will have no problems, as far as I can see, that he will not be able to deal with. Having said that, I'm not a psychologist, so that is just my opinion. Though I am a financialist, so let's talk about the numbers.
Yes, so Wendy wants $400,000 to leave the relationship, the marriage. Glenn has already paid her $30,000 and given her half of his RRSPs, equaling $200,000. There is still another $170,000 that will come from their residence by Glenn taking on a mortgage. Glenn owns other assets as well, but those fall outside of the marriage timeline. You see, you may have done the math already, but a 65-year-old with a 21-year-old son means that Glenn was in his 40s when Nathan was born. And as we mentioned in the very beginning, they've been only married for 18 years. So Glenn, being a good saver, had some assets before going into the marriage.
Yes, this provides an interesting twist in things, as the divorce settlement does not have to include any savings before the marriage began. Glenn worked on the railroad until he was about 50 years old and then chose to retire from it with a pension. Before he was married, the railroad he worked for decided to become a publicly traded company and offered to their employees a chance to buy stocks at the entry price. Glenn decided this would be a good investment and was able to purchase a good amount of that stock. Now that stock is worth 10 times what he paid, but all that money is considered to be not part of the matrimonial assets.
And of course, because he retired and started receiving his pension and will continue to do so for the rest of his days, Wendy is entitled to some of that pension. The legal ruling around this subject is that she's entitled to the amount of pension that equals to 50% of the number of years Glenn contributed to the pension while they were married. In this example, Glenn worked and contributed to his pension for a total of 4 years while he was married to Wendy. So therefore, Wendy's entitled to 50% of the total amount of those 4 years contributed to his pension. It was a very complicated calculation, but the total buyout amount came to $15,000.
Well, Glenn was not interested in giving more cash up front to Wendy, so he wanted to negotiate this aspect. From consultation with his lawyer and discussion with his financial planner, Glenn decided to offer instead 100% spousal benefit to his pension. You see, when one decides to take their pension, there are a number of options as to what kind of payment to receive, usually 6 or 8 options. The option that pays the most monthly benefit is usually a single individual that stops payment when the recipient dies. Usually the lowest monthly benefit option is if 100% of the benefit is transferable to a spouse. In this case, that means when Glenn dies and Wendy is still alive, she will receive 100% of the monthly benefit. So Glenn agreed to leave her on the pension as the irrevocable beneficiary to his monthly pension instead of, quote-unquote, buying her out with the $15,000.
How clever. The other thing that Wendy wanted to make sure of was that Nathan would be the recipient of Glenn's estate. This was an easy one for them to agree upon, as this is also Glenn's priority. Wendy was happy to find out that Glenn, a few years back, had actually bought a permanent whole life insurance policy to cover the capital gains cost that would be Nathan's responsibility upon the death of Glenn. This type of planning is where permanent life insurance really shines and is a superb method for protecting the financial legacy left to your heirs.
And here's how it worked in Glenn's case. First, with his financial guru, we figured out what the estimated final estate tax bill would be for him when he passes on. The projections were all set for him dying at age 82, when he said, and I quote, "I will be a messy puddle in the corner of the room by then." So we determined that his estate would owe the government $330,000 at age 82. We backtracked to how much of a policy face value we needed, which was $175,000. We chose the Estate Achiever from Canada Life, which has an option of stopping the premiums at 20 years. And with some more tweaking and adding additional payments, we were able to reduce that to 13 years. So Glenn is paying $15,000 per year for this policy with a total cost to him of $180,000 to give him the total amount of $330,000 coverage at age 82. Basically, he is prepaying the tax bill for 55 cents on the dollar and saving 45% of the tax bill so Nathan can receive as much as possible of an inheritance.
Yes, and there's much more benefit to that as well. Permanent life insurance comes with what is called a cash surrender value, which enables the owner of the policy to withdraw some of the cash that is available. In Glenn's case, at age 80, he would have access to about $175,000. We're using this money as funds that might be needed to use if long-term care became an unexpected expense. And of course, as Glenn is the owner, he has full control to dissolve the policy if Nathan becomes an undeserving heir for some reason. I don't see that as a possibility, but the insurance is in place, so he's covered for the worst case scenario.
And now that is smart financial planning. I am constantly impressed by how much valuable information that we are providing to our clients and now to you, our listeners. Do you have a similar situation of wanting to pay the least to the government possible and the most to your heirs? We highly recommend to discuss this with a professional. Whether you are in a divorce situation or not, talk to your financial planner. And if you do not have one or want a second opinion, contact Ella or I, your financial gurus. You can call us at 778-879-0820 or email us at twofinancialgurus@gmail.com or post a comment or message on our Facebook page, Dollars with Sense. We have to pause for a moment, but when we come back, we will announce a special investors group event that you could win a reservation for and wrap up today's session. And of course, when we come back, your action items. Welcome back to Dollars and Divorce on Dollars with Sense. I'm Terrence, and with my co-host Ella. Before we get to your action items, though, we'd like to invite you to an exclusive event we are hosting on June 23rd at the Evergreen Arts Center. It is called Battle of the Brushes, and it will be a spectacular time. You will see the results of last year's event on your screen right now.
Yes, so exciting. The lucky recipient will join us for a special evening of fun, art, and creativity. So you can enjoy a cocktail reception with hors d'oeuvres while watching teams of 2 artists compete live to create master works of art. The Battle of the Brush is a live painting competition where teams of artists compete to create spontaneous works of art. 4 teams made up of 2 artists each are given a mystery theme and have 75 minutes to create original, collective works that will then be judged by you, the audience. Your favorite painting will be on display and available for purchase through a silent auction after the competition. Proceeds will benefit Share Family and Community Services.
This is an exclusive event for Investors Group and is by invitation only. So in order to reserve your spot, all you need to do is contact us via email at twofinancialgurus@gmail.com. That's twofinancialgurus@gmail.com. And let us know what your favorite moment has been with regards to art. It may be the time you saw your favorite painting, or your best theater show experience, or your favorite sculpture, or etc. The one that is the most intriguing story will be the winner, which will be chosen by Ella and I. The only cost to the winner will be a $20 donation to Share Society and a non-perishable food item in support of the local food bank.
So I'll just share with you briefly, my favorite art experience was seeing a Mark Rothko exhibition in London. And I remember being very deeply moved. It was in a separate room where doors are closed and a bench in the middle of the room where you could see 4 silk screens of Mark Rothko. And I remember just overwhelmed with emotion. I I broke down and cried. It was just the most wonderful thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Wow, that's amazing. For me, it was watching my kids in the war room at the Chateau de Versailles. So the Chateau de Versailles in France, the war room has about 20 or 25 paintings that are all the wars of France from the 1400s to about the mid-1800s. Each one of these paintings is about 20 feet tall and about 15 feet wide. So they're really massive. And as part of when we went to the Castle of Versailles, we've got a translator that sort of broke down the details of the painting. And my kids, being age 7 and 9 at the time, spent 45 minutes getting a college degree history lesson on all these paintings. And they were completely enthralled. It was so beautiful to see that happen.
So again, for you, our listeners, send us, and video can work too, an email of your favorite art experiences to twofinancialgurus@gmail.com, and the winner will receive 2 tickets to this fantastic exclusive Investors Group event, Battle of the Brushes.
And your action item for this week, no matter what your marital status may be at the present time, be it happily married or going through a divorce, make sure you are planning for your future and the future of your loved ones. If you do not have any idea or clue of what your finances will look like should you see your end of days sooner than thought, your loved ones that you leave behind are responsible for figuring it all out and settling all matters. This on top of the grieving of their loss of you. With some strategic planning, you can not only make that transition much less stressful for them, but you can also control how much or how little of your estate goes to the taxes versus beneficiaries. So the action item is, once again, to contact your financial planner and ask about your estate plan. As always, our door is open to you. You can reach us by simply calling 778-879-0820. Thank you, Ella. And emailing at twofinancialgurus, the number 2financialgurus@gmail.com, or contacting us through the Facebook page, Dollars with Sense.
Thank you so much to everyone who helped us make this show possible. Have yourself a great day and a fantastic week ahead. Again, reach out to us. Don't hesitate. And you'll see us next week for another exciting episode on financial planning. Until then, this is Ella Lange with my co-host Terrence Vanderwood saying, may your dollars and cents be with you.